If you scroll through TikTok or, Instagram Reels for 5 minutes today, you are almost guaranteed to see something beautifully mundane.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like a teenager filming their morning iced coffee routine.
Yeah.
Or maybe a 20-something showing off a thrift store sweater haul. Or just a really slow panning shot of a rainy window.
Yeah, the classic atmospheric aesthetic videos.
Exactly. But beneath all these everyday moments, you'll hear a very specific soundtrack. It's this moody, dusty, cinematic instrumental that sounds like it belongs to, I don't know, an incredibly stylish Italian gunslinger.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
And as a listener, you probably assume the creator of that audio is a modern producer, right? Someone who just happens to be brilliant at synthesizing vintage vibes.
Well, yeah, I mean, we always tend to assume the architects of the current cultural moment actually belong to the current moment. We view pop culture chronologically.
Right.
We expect the new to simply replace the old, and for internet trends to be driven by people who, actually grew up on the internet.
But when you actually track down the source of that viral audio, or when you look closely at the liner notes of a massive DJ Khaled and J. Cole track, that chronological timeline just completely shatters.
It really does. It falls apart entirely.
We're looking at a cultural landscape that is secretly being puppet mastered by a man born over a century ago in Turin, Italy.
It is the absolute definition of a cross-generational blind spot. I mean, we are talking about a mid-century Italian composer whose work has essentially become a cheat code for modern producers.
A cheat code, yes.
Yeah, for content creators looking to instantly manufacture a mood, his music is just right there.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to explore a stack of biographies, discographies, and cultural analyses surrounding a composer you have almost certainly heard, even if you don't know his name.
We are mapping out the staggering legacy of Italian maestro Piero Piccioni.
We're going to trace his trajectory from a post-war jazz pioneer and, wildly enough, a practicing lawyer, to scoring over 300 films, shaping the spaghetti western genre, secretly soundtracking modern hip-hop, and unexpectedly dominating today's digital algorithms.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this, because this deep dive is specifically tailored to give you an aha moment about the hidden hand secretly driving the music of today.
Right, and to understand the mechanics of how his music eventually conquered the digital age of the 2020s, we really have to establish the sheer improbability of his beginnings.
Where do we even start?
Well, his specific timeless sound was forged by a collision of very different, very volatile worlds in early 20th century Europe.
Right, so he was born in Turin in 1921.
Yeah.
And the musical whiplash in his childhood home, according to the sources, was just intense.
Oh, completely.
On his mother's side, and her maiden name, Marengo, actually gave him his early pseudonym, Piero Morgan. He was just flooded with American jazz.
Yeah, she had this vast collection of imported records.
Which means a young Piccioni was absorbing the complex improvisational rhythms of people like Art Tatum and Charlie Parker long before they were globally recognized icons.
Exactly. And then you look at his father, Attilio Piccioni, who was on a completely different trajectory. He eventually becomes a really prominent post-war politician with the Christian Democratic Party.
Talk about a contrast.
Right. And his father would actually take him to the EIR radio studios in Florence. Now, EIR was the rigid, state-run broadcasting network at the time.
Yeah, very formal, very official.
Highly formal. Heavily focused on state-approved classical performances. And Piccioni even attended the Conservatorio Luigi Cherubini, which is this esteemed, highly traditional classical music institution in Florence.
So he is simultaneously internalizing the strict, formal rules of classical orchestration on one hand,
and the wildly subversive swinging energy of American jazz on the other.
That collision of structure and improvisation completely sets the stage for his first major cultural milestone. At just 17 years old, in 1938, he debuts his 013 big band on the radio.
Which is an incredible feat for a teenager.
It is. But the historical weight of this doesn't truly land until 1944. Because after the Allied liberation of Italy, 013 returns to the airwaves. They become the very first Italian jazz band to be broadcast nationally after the fall of fascism.
We really have to pause on why that matters, because it's huge. Under Mussolini's fascist regime, jazz wasn't just, discouraged. It was actively suppressed.
Wow.
The regime viewed it as a degenerate, foreign, and specifically American influence that directly threatened their nationalistic ideals.
Right. So when the regime falls And Piccioni immediately gets on the state radio network to broadcast a swinging big band track. He isn't just playing notes.
No, the mechanics of the moment really matter here. He is weaponizing a previously banned genre to broadcast a literal sonic declaration of liberation to the Italian public.
Which is just an incredibly triumphant moment. But instead of riding that wave of pure musical rebellion, he pulls off this bizarre pivot.
Yeah, the career change.
It's wild. He's a jazz pioneer. His original songs are being published by Karish Editions, which was a massive European sheet music publisher at the time. And he suddenly decides to become a practicing attorney in Rome.
Yep.
By day, he's drafting legal contracts in a lawyer's toga. By night, he's this boundary-pushing jazz pianist. I mean, how does a guy splitting his time like that actually transition into being one of the most prolific film composers in history?
Well, his legal career is often treated like a strange footnote, but it was actually the mechanism that made his film career possible. It functioned as a Trojan horse.
Wait, really? A Trojan horse? How?
So he wasn't handling standard civil disputes. He was working on copyright and movie rights for massive Italian film producers like Titanis and the Dino De Laurentiis company.
Oh.
Yeah, these were the absolute titans of post-war Italian cinema.
So he's literally sitting in boardrooms with the exact people who need music for their movies.
Precisely. He was handling the dry, legal framework of the film industry, but he was also a known entity in the jazz clubs. And the legendary director Michelangelo Antonioni actually tapped into this dual identity.
Antonioni, that's a huge name.
Massive. Antonioni needed a score for a documentary being directed by his apprentice, Luigi Polidoro. He knew Piccioni the lawyer, but he had also heard Piccioni the jazz musician play piano.
So he puts two and two together.
Exactly. Antonioni bridged the gap. He realized this legal asset had the exact avant-garde musical sensibilities the post-war neo-realist cinema movement required.
And that one documentary connection basically acts as the domino. It leads directly to his first feature film score in 1952, Gianni Franciolini's Il Mondo le Condanna.
And from there, he just never looks back.
Right. He drops a legal career and steps fully into the world of cinema. And the sheer volume of what he produced next is, honestly, difficult to process. We're talking about over 300 film scores.
It's unbelievable.
You could watch a different movie scored by Piero Piccioni almost every day for a year.
The output is staggering, but the quality control is what cements his legacy. He became the trusted sonic architect for the greatest directors of the era.
Yeah, the sources note he worked intensely with Francesco Rosi.
Right. He eventually won a Nostra d'Argento award in 1963 for scoring Salvatore Giuliano. And for context, the Nostra d'Argento is essentially the Italian equivalent of a Golden Globe, awarded by the National Syndicate of Film Journalists.
Okay, so major prestige.
Absolutely. He also became indispensable to Lina Wertmuller, winning a David Di Donatello Award, which is basically Italy's Oscar for her 1974 film Swept Away.
And his stylistic range during this era was bordering on chaotic, but like in the best way possible.
But he did everything.
He is writing these sweeping, lush orchestral pieces. Then he pivots to bubblegum teen pop, spy movie anthems, and sophisticated, easy-listening lounge music.
He was incredibly versatile.
He frequently layered his tracks with female soul vocalists, too. Singers like Shawn Robinson and the Edinburgh-born Lydia McDonald. It gave his music this incredibly sultry, sophisticated texture. I mean, he was even scoring psychedelic cult films like Barbet Schroeder's More.
He had this chameleon-like ability to understand the emotional core of a film and build a bespoke sonic universe around it. He didn't just have one single sound.
Right.
He had an overarching sensibility. He brought his deep understanding of jazz chords and syncopated rhythms into genres that had really never seen them before.
Okay, wait. I need to stop you there because that brings us to his work in the spaghetti western genre, and I have some real skepticism here.
Okay, let's hear it.
When we talk about Italian cinema in the 1960s, he scores the 1968 classic Se incontri Sartana prega per la tua morte. If you meet Sartana, pray for your death.
A total classic.
It's legendary. Collectors are still hunting down the remastered CDs on labels like Point Records. But, I mean, when I think spaghetti western, I hear Ennio Morricone.
Naturally, yeah.
I hear the whistling, the cracking whips, the electric twang of the guitar. So, was Piccioni actually innovating in this space, or was he just sort of riding Morricone's coattails, copying the template to get a paycheck from a popular genre?
It is a totally valid question because Morricone cast an incredibly long shadow, and composers like Bruno Nicolai certainly operated within Morricone's established template.
Right.
But if you analyze the Sartana score mechanically, Piccioni is doing something entirely different. He isn't relying on whips and coyote howls.
So what is he doing?
He imports his jazz and bossa nova background straight into the desert. He uses the Hammond organ, which is deeply associated with jazz clubs and gospel, to drive the tension of a gunfight.
Wait, a Hammond organ. So he's basically bringing a sophisticated lounge aesthetic to a dusty, violent shootout.
That juxtaposition is his genius. By laying complex melodic jazz structures underneath gritty violence, he completely changed the tone of the genre.
I can see that. It makes the violence suddenly feel choreographed or, like, almost chic.
Exactly. He didn't just provide background noise. He color graded the emotion of the film using unconventional instrumentation. He proved that a Western didn't have to sound like a Western to be effective.
Which perfectly explains why his music refused to stay trapped in the 1960s.
Yeah, it transcended the era.
You'd assume a composer who peaked in the mid-20th century and who passed away in 2004 would be relegated to the archives, right? Beloved by film school students, but completely irrelevant to modern pop culture.
That's usually how it goes.
But instead, his arrangements became the secret architectural backbone for modern hip-hop and contemporary media.
Right, and the transition from Italian cinema to modern media happens precisely because his music operates as an emotional anchor. A brilliant early example of this repurposing is the Coen brothers' cult classic, The Big Lebowski.
Oh, the famous log jamming scene.
Yes. The Coen brothers took his song Traffic Boom, which he originally composed for a 1968 Alberto Sordi comedy called Il Medico della Mutua, and they just dropped it into their movie as the soundtrack for a completely absurd fictional film within a film.
They didn't alter the track at all, did they?
No, not at all. They just relied on the fact that Piccioni's music instantly establishes a specific, undeniable, slightly surreal mood.
But the leap into hip-hop is where the mechanics get really fascinating. I want you, the listener, to wrap your head around this. Let's look at a track called It's Possible, which Piccioni wrote for a 1974 film called Il Dio solo l'appelle.
An amazing track.
It is this masterclass in sweeping orchestral arrangements, heavy bass lines, and catchy jazz elements. Decades later, a producer named Hollywood JB takes that exact track and samples it for DJ Khaled's song Jermaine's Interlude, featuring J. Cole on the massive hit album Major Key.
Yeah, that sample is so iconic now.
And that same 1974 track is also sampled by the rapper Isaiah Rashad on his song Headshots and by the rapper Lucky on Waiting On. Why are these modern cutting-edge hip-hop producers digging through the crates for a 1970s Italian film composer?
Well, the answer really lies in the technical limitations of modern digital production. Today, a producer can open a laptop and synthesize almost any sound imaginable.
Right, the tools are endless.
But digital drum machines and synthesized strings are perfectly on a mathematical grid. They can sound very sterile. What they cannot easily replicate is the analog warmth.
The imperfections, basically.
Exactly. The acoustic resonance of a massive string section recording in a physical room, or the slight human swing of a live 1970s rhythm section.
So they are looking for something that sounds inherently expensive and human.
Yes, they're essentially buying a pre-packaged $100,000 orchestral mood. Hip-hop producers are really just modern-day directors trying to set a cinematic scene in a matter of seconds.
That makes so much sense.
Right. When J. Cole needs immense emotional gravity to anchor his verses, a sterile digital beat just won't cut it. Piccioni's intricate, soulful melodies provide a dramatic, textured foundation.
They isolate a lush string swell from a 1974 Italian film, layer-heavy, modern 808 sub-bass underneath it, and the contrast between that analog history and digital present just creates magic.
It's an incredible fusion.
And that ability to instantly set a scene, to provide a pre-packaged mood, is exactly what triggered his most recent and arguably most surreal evolution. Piero Piccioni has become a viral phenomenon for an entirely new global generation on social media.
The digital renaissance of his catalog is in full swing.
It really is.
The numbers completely validate the phenomenon. He has broken out of the vinyl collector niche entirely. Look at mainstream television today.
Yeah.
His track Racconti d'amore was heavily featured in the soundtrack for the 5th season of the Netflix hit Emily in Paris.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. The showrunners used his specific brand of European elegance to immediately communicate a sophisticated romantic aesthetic to millions of viewers worldwide.
But the social media virality is what really demonstrates the utility of his music. Think about the track Arizona Dreaming. It was originally composed for the gritty, dusty Sartana spaghetti western universe we analyzed earlier.
Right.
Today it has generated billions of views and millions of user-created videos on TikTok and Instagram Reels.
And consider what those videos actually depict. It is rarely anything cinematic.
That's the crazy part. You have teenagers filming a mundane commute, or pouring oat milk into a glass, or doing a fit check in their bedroom mirror, and they are setting it to the soundtrack of an Italian gunslinger.
It sounds absurd on paper.
It does, but it works perfectly. I think of his music like a cinematic Instagram filter. You can take any raw, boring piece of footage, apply his music over the top of it, and it instantly color grades the emotion of the scene.
Right.
It makes a trip to the grocery store feel like a nostalgic, expensive, deeply romantic film sequence.
That analogy hits on the exact mechanism of his current success, because the fast-paced digital world demands an instant vibe.
You only have a few seconds to hook someone.
Exactly. You have maybe 15 seconds to tell the viewer exactly how they should feel about the images on screen. Piccioni spent his entire life mastering the art of painting vivid, emotional pictures for 2-hour Francesco Rosi films. Today, social media users are just compressing that 2-hour emotional arc into a 15-second reel. The format has shrunk dramatically, obviously, but the psychological mechanism of his music, the way those jazz chords and lush strings manipulate human emotion, operates exactly the same way.
It forces you to step back and look at his timeline with genuine awe.
It really does.
I mean, we've tracked the path of a kid in 1930s Turin, absorbing banned American jazz records and rigid classical training.
Right.
He uses that tension to broadcast liberation on state radio, hides inside a lawyer's toga to infiltrate the highest levels of Italian cinema, scores over 300 films, redefines the spaghetti western with Hammond organs.
Don't forget becoming a foundational sample for modern rap giants like J. Cole.
Yes, and ends up as the emotional filter for a billion everyday moments on TikTok.
He built a sonic legacy that just refuses to be confined to the technology or the culture of the era it was created in. He truly mastered the architecture of feeling.
So, to you listening, the next time you hear a beautifully moody hip-hop beat drop, or you laugh at a quirky needle drop in a movie like The Big Lebowski, or you catch yourself romanticizing a 15-second video of someone making coffee on your phone, take a second to look past the modern packaging.
Yeah, look a little closer.
Ask yourself, is that the hidden hand of Piero Piccioni? Is that the invisible architect striking again?
And I'd leave you with this final thought to mull over. We constantly pride ourselves on living in an era of unprecedented digital innovation, right? We think we're inventing the future of culture right on our phones.
We really do.
But if a film score composed with analog instruments in the 1960s perfectly captures the anxiety, the romance, and the aesthetic mood of internet culture in 2026, well, what does that really say about the universality of human emotion?
That's a great question.
Are we truly discovering new aesthetic sounds today, or are we simply endlessly remixing the emotional landscapes built by mid-century maestros like Piccioni?
It completely shatters that chronological timeline of culture we talked about at the beginning. The sound of tomorrow might just belong to a jazz-loving lawyer from the past.